Good morning. I'm David Bowman, the Executive Director of the Four Corners Regional Education Cooperative #1. And we're going to spend a little bit of time continuing with our Photoshop series. And in this video, we're going to look at how do you change colors of clothing, or anything else for that matter. We're going to use clothing as an example, all in the idea that it may help you produce better websites, profiles, documents, flyers, all of those kinds of things that you have to produce. And sometimes you've got people in them, and for whatever reason, you want to change the color of their clothes or something else in the image. So we're going to look at two images, and I'm going to show you just a few simple techniques that you can use to very simply do that. All right, with that being said, let's pop over to Photoshop. All right, there is Photoshop. And what we should be looking at here is a picture of a young man with kind of a mustardy yellow shirt. And we're going to change the color of his shirt. Now, there's lots of different ways to apply color to an image or change colors on an image. But the best and most common way to do it is through something called a hue saturation color layer. And where we find it is down here. I've got my layers panel open, and down here at the bottom of that with this little circle half filled is where we find the effects. So I am going to choose the hue saturation layer. Now, what are we looking at here? So we've got a slider up here for hue, which is the color range. We've got a slider for saturation, which is how much of the color are we putting in there, and a slider for the lightness, which is kind of self-explanatory. However, we're going to run into a little problem. I can simply change the hue. And what it will do is it will change the hue of the entire image, which is obviously not what we want. So first, we have to identify the specific areas where we want to apply this particular effect. All right, so let me just go ahead and get rid of that altogether. Now, I know that I'm going to be looking at his shirt, so if you want to make a good selection of something to say, this is the area that I want to work with, the #1 best, most accurate way to do that is using the pen tool. However, pen tool takes a little time to master. I will just tell you that, and quite a bit of time to explain. But it is the best. So if you really want to look into that, search YouTube, whatever. Maybe I'll do a video on it about the pen tool. But here it's going to be pretty simple because he just has one color in his shirt. I could use my lasso up here in my toolbar, and I can just trace around it, right? That's kind of tricky to do and a little more work than what we need to do at this point because he's only got one color. So instead, I'm going to use another tool called the magic wand. And the magic wand says, okay, wherever I click, find colors that are like this and select them. And then we can keep on adding until we have the correct area. So let's see what have I got. In my settings for the wand, I've got a 5x5 average. So grab a cluster of pixels, get the average color. I have my tolerance set at 20, which is kind of a low tolerance because I don't want to select too much. And very importantly, I have checked contiguous, which means don't find every color in the image. Just find the ones that are right here where I've clicked and anything that's subsequent to it. So I've got my magic wand, and I'm going to just simply click on his shirt. And you see a lot of it just got selected. Now, with any selection tools, if I hold down my Shift key on my keyboard, I can keep adding to that selection. And you see I'm getting more and more selected. This is going to get us 90% of the way there, but we're going to have to do a little bit of refinement, and it's simple to do. So a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. All right, we basically have the majority of it selected now. All right, So let's just go clean it up a bit. So let me blow up. And now I'm going to use my lasso tool, which is up here in my toolbar, right? Up here. And holding down my shift key, I'm going to just fill in. I'm going to just grab a few of these extra areas that got missed and all those little speckly bits that didn't pick up. Like that. And I'll do just a hair more. We can always go back and refine this later, which is a great thing about Photoshop. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to do it kind of roughly, just so we can use it for demonstration purposes. And let me get around his arm over here. And like I said, I'm doing this very, very quickly, and a little bit up here around his laptop, underneath his arm. And since this is not a video about how to make selections, I'm not going to spend much time doing this. But I want to have enough at least to kind of demonstrate the purposes. And oops, shift, and with my lasso, just grab that. Again, if you really want the best possible selection, use the pen tool, but this is going to get us close enough for today. Oh, I picked up some of his pants. So let me Alt lasso, which subtracts from a selected area. Shift lasso will add to the selection. Alt lasso will subtract. Okay, you know what? We're going to call that good. All right. So there we have his shirt. Now when I apply the hue saturation layer, it's going to create a new layer, and it's going to come with a mask that is the same as the area that I have just selected, which is to say, this is the only place where I want the image. So let's try it. All right, so now let me come back down here to my effect layers. Let me choose hue saturation. And you will see now when I adjust my hue slider, it's not affecting the whole image, it's just affecting that particular area, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and choose a nice color for this young man. And we'll adjust the hue a bit, give him a nice blue shirt. It's a little too intense, so I'm going to bring up, no, I'm going to bring down the saturation. And I think I'm even going to bring down the lightness. Now, up, down, up, down, up, down. If I really took enough time, I could give him the same color I've got on. And how cool would that be? All right. So now we have applied the effect just to the area that we want. And if you see over here in my layers menu, right here, there's my hue saturation layer. And next to it in black and white is the mask. The fun thing about masks, lots of fun things about masks, super useful. If I alt click on it, I can see where the mask is. Now with the mask, anything that's white is where the effect will go. And anything that is black, the effect will not be applied there. It's kind of like we made a big stencil, and you spray paint the stencil. The paint only goes where you don't have the paper or whatever from the stencil. It's the exact same thing here. So we see now where our mask is, where the effect will be applied, and we can add or subtract from that mask to apply the effect in more areas or in less areas. So let me alt click on the mask again to get us back to our normal view. Now, why did I just go through that little bit of nonsense there? Well, you see, I've got some areas that are missed in the mask, and I can fix that because masks are very cool. So I've got the mask selected, not the effect in that layer, but I've actually clicked on the mask icon. And then I can use my paintbrush, and I can paint with white. You see over here on my colors, my foreground color is white, my background color is black. I can paint with my foreground color right up here to add a little white area in that mask, which allows the effect to be applied. And how cool is that? So let me blow up a little more so I can get really in there in a much smaller brush, and let's go ahead and add some white. Now, obviously, you're not seeing white on the image because I'm working in the mask right now. So what you're seeing is the effect, the hue saturation is now being applied to any area where I am painting with white on the mask. And I can spend lots and lots of time and continue to refine this until it is exactly correct, but I'm not going to do that. For your own images, you're going to want to do that. So I can fill in with white there. And what the heck, since we're here, let's just grab that also. Okay, good enough. And what I have just done, actually, is I have modified the mask to make sure it is actually, actually getting the areas that I want to get. And let me just, let me paint a little white there. Okay. And that allows very precise application of any effects. I'm trying to get rid of this yellow halo around him. There's a dot right there also. All right, how does it look now? Let's take a look. Okay, for our purposes, that is going to be just fine. And we have now changed the color of his shirt. Next, we're going to look at an image which is quite a bit more complex. We're going to use the same hue saturation layer with some extra tricks on it. And then we're going to come back to this young man, and I'm actually going to change the design of his shirt, which will be very cool. Now, I will say one more thing. So here we've got our hue saturation layer over here. I'm just thinking ahead. I'm going to do more stuff to this young man's image. I don't want to go through that process every single time of creating a mask, a brand new mask. I want to create a group of layers and have one mask that applies to everything in the group. So I only have to do it one time. And it's really easy to do. So I've got that layer selected. On my keyboard, I'm simply going to do Control G or Option G if you're on a Mac. So now I've got something called Group 1. And I'm going to take that mask, which is only on the hue saturation layer, and I'm going to put it on the group. So anything that I do inside of that group will be constrained by the mask. And I only have to do it one time. Simple to do. I'm going to simply click on that mask, and I'm going to drag it up to the group until the group highlights. And now the mask is on the group. So anything that I do, and I'm going to change more colors, I'm going to add images and do some fun stuff to this picture here. As long as I do it in that group, that mask will apply to it, and I don't have to keep recreating. Okay, so there's changing colors 1. But let's take a look at this image, which is a lot more complex. And as you see, she has a lot of colors in her shirt. She's got greens and blues and some kind of cream color and black and so forth. I only want to change the green. Now, I've already prepped this in advance. As you see, I've already got a group, and I have a very rough mask already in place. So I'm going to add things within that group, and the mask is already there. I didn't want to have to bore you with going through that process again. So let's see what happens. So let me grab a hue saturation, and if I change the saturation or the hue, it's being applied to all of the colors in her shirt, which is not what I want. I only want to change the greens. So let me invert it, put it back where it was. Because if we look at this, so here, let's blow it up a little bit. And I'm going to grab a pen tool. Okay, so if we look, we've got this color we want to change, right? So that one changes. But this one we don't want to affect. We don't want to affect this one. We don't want to affect that one, and so forth, right? We only want to change those. So how do we get to just that? Not too difficult, actually. So up here on my hue saturation layer that I just added. And again, if I change it, it's going to affect all of the colors, not what we want. But I've got some additional options here. Up here, I've got a pull down menu for what hue are we looking for? You know, what big hue, reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. And I can use that to start selecting specific colors. And the other thing that I've got is I have two color sliders down here. The top color slider is what is the target color, and the bottom is what are we changing it to? And right now they are the same. So the reds are looking like reds, and the blues are looking like blues, and the greens are looking like greens. But that's where we can start being more precise. So what colors am I looking for? Well, it kind of looks like the green colors, but if I click on my little hand over here and get an eyedropper, and I select anywhere on those what looks like green, Photoshop is telling me that's actually a variation of yellows, not greens after all. So I've got yellow selected. I use my eyedropper. Photoshop says, you're working with yellows. Okay. So now something else very interesting has happened. If we look at those two color sliders down there, now it has some controls on it. And I can start moving it to say this top color will now look like a different color at the bottom. So if I start dragging this, I just grab it right in the middle and I start dragging it. What you're going to see is I can start affecting very specific colors. Let me invert that for a moment. Let me put it back where it was. We know that we want yellows. Let me demonstrate. If I take my hue and I'm going to just blow it out, which is what you're going to need to do. And I'm going to take my saturation. I'm going to crank that up also. You see that those blues and blacks are pretty much the same. And for the most part, those creams are also the same because they're not yellows, and that's what we're playing with. On the sliders at the bottom, you see I've got yellows on the top, and it's now being converted to blues and blue shades on the bottom. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab right in the middle of that, and I'm going to slide it a little to the right and a little bit to the left until I see that everything, or just about everything, is being affected by the hue and saturation. And I can even grab these little handles in there, and I can stretch out that range a bit so I can pick up more and more and more. And I can stretch them down a little bit. Oh, don't want that. Let's see. Until I have the maximum area being affected that I want to be affected. Let's gonna go with that. Okay, now, having done that, let me take my hue back down to 0 and my saturation back down to 0. So on the sliders, it's going to say this color range up here, turn it into these down here. And it's only going to affect that particular color range. So now, when I start adjusting my hue, it's only going to affect those colors on the top slider, not all of the colors in the selected area. So now, as you can see, I can start doing something very interesting. For demonstration purposes, let's go with that. So if you look on my little things that I drew, I have, in fact, changed the green colors into something new. but the blue color is the same here. The black's the same. The whites are the same. Down here, the blues are the same. They have not been affected. Let me turn it off and turn it back on. And you can see that those colors stay the same. And instead, just the target colors have been affected. So let me hide that. And that's how we deal with changing colors on a more complex image where we don't want to change every color in the selected area, just specific colors. First, we get the base hue. In this case, it was yellows. And then we start adjusting the sliders at the bottom to make sure that we are selecting the color range, the target color range, and then turning it into the color that we want. So we've got our yellows, right? Wherever it is, cyans, blues, greens, reds, masters, there we go. We have on the top band, we've got the color range selected between the two handles. Just that color range is going to be turned into whatever we have selected down below. So we can be very specific about where are we actually going to apply the image. So we've got our before right there. Let me just blow that up. There we go. We've got our before and we have our after. Pretty cool, huh? All right, now I did say that I'm going to actually change that boy's shirt. We're going to do something very interesting. So right now, he's got just a plain color shirt. Maybe I want to give him something a little cooler, right? Something a little snazzier. So I'm still in that group. Here's my group icon up here. So I just select anywhere in the group. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag in an image that I want to apply to his shirt. And because I'm still inside that group, you'll notice that it's only getting applied to his shirt. So let me stretch this out a bit. So it's going to cover up the whole shirt like that. I'll bring it down a little bit this way. I'm going to make sure you get both of his sleeves. Then I'm going to just kind of drag it to where I want it and click the check mark or hit enter on my keyboard to confirm. All right. Cool picture. It kind of looks crappy right now because it looks like somebody just stuck a picture on there. It doesn't look like a shirt. So I'm going to take this layer right here and I'm going to change the blend mode. Right now, it's set at normal, which is just put it on top of everything. Don't blend it in, just drop it in there. And I'm going to change it to soft light, maybe overlay, maybe hard light, hard light. That gives me a nice contrast. So the picture is now within his shirt. The problem is I don't especially like the colors. So let me add, what do we do to change colors? Let me add a hue saturation layer in there. And in this case, I'm going to just do master. I want to change all the colors of that image that I just dropped in there. So I'm not going to select color ranges like I did for the girl's shirt. And let's give them something pretty cool. There's that nice blue color. It's very awesome. And I think, let's see, what do we have up here? I like that one, just too saturated. So I'm going to bring down the saturation a little bit. And now, that's pretty cool, actually. And I think I'll even make it a little lighter, just a hair lighter like that. There. So now we have before, good looking shirt, boring, to a pretty cool shirt here with a neat picture of a guy surfing on it. And because I used the blend mode up here, I didn't just drop it on top, but I blended it in. Because I did that, I can actually still see the shirt. It's blending in. And now we have a pretty cool picture. All right, so that's some techniques for changing the color and the design of clothing on Photoshop. Again, you can apply this to anything. clothing is just the example that we used here. But at the end of the day, we've got something we can put on our website, on our newsletter, on our profiles, on our presentations, whatever it is, and fit the color schemes, and looks nice. So one last thing I've got to say before we close up here is this video and all other videos that we've got for TechBits are going to be posted to our website, which you can get to very simply. And here is how you get to them. Let me just write it out for you. All of our videos are https://nmrec the number 1.org/ that's the website, right? /tech /bits. You can go to that website, see all of our videos. We've got a bunch of them on there, and I hope that they are useful to you. So that's what we've got today. I hope you'll find this interesting. I hope you'll find it fun to play with and useful for your purposes. So thank you for joining us today. Again, I'm David Bowman, the Four Corners Regional Education Cooperative, and I wish you a great day.